Hello, everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell with news and views from the Nefarium on Thursday, August 22nd, 2019. Before we get to what the Nefarium is up to, I do want to say that there is a vid chat tomorrow at 2 p.m. But because YouTube and Google have, in their less than infinite wisdom, decided to change the platform, it's essential for members of the website to try to log into the vid chat, pardon me, directly on the YouTube channel. All right. I don't know exactly how this works. I'm trying to get some information from Daniel to see if he can adjust the platform so that people don't have to jump through all these hoops. And I do apologize for this because this has really thrown a monkey wrench into my ability to keep everything going. The second thing that I need to tell everybody is that there have been storms in the area. Tomorrow we're supposed to have storms. So it might be that I get knocked off during vid chat due to power outages. I had one last 2 weeks ago when we had a scheduled vid chat. It was a 3-hour power outage. So anyway, just to let you know, please try and log in directly to the YouTube channel because the live chat room is now directly in the YouTube window rather than in the website chat window. So please, bear with us here. Send your support tickets to Daniel and so on and so forth, because I could really use the help trying to figure out what's going on. In addition to that, please, and I'm trying to look at my notes here, please try to also log into the website. This new format is difficult, so you're going to log into YouTube, you're going to log into the website as usual for the vid chat. Cross your fingers. Hopefully I'll be able to get this to work. All right. Now, watching Italy is proving to be exactly what I thought it was going to be. It's going to be very interesting. And the coalition now between Giuseppe Conte, the former prime minister who just recently resigned, and Matteo Salvini, who's been effectively more or less the de facto leader of Italy, has come to an end. And I want to link an article here and talk about some things that author Tom Longo has just published a couple days ago. The article's titled, "Italy and Salvini Face a Real Crisis Now." And I want to read a few paragraphs here and then kind of predict what I think is going to happen. So anyway, here we go. Quote, "With the resignation of Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte, the future of Italy is now up in the air. There are many things that come into play with Conte resigning before the no confidence vote tabled by the Lega leader Matteo Salvini could take place." And skipping a few paragraphs, "You will hear a lot about how nonpartisan Conte did this for the sake of Italy to stop the mad, selfish, pardon me, and unprofessional Salvini from taking power. It's good political theater, but it's as disingenuous as the day is long, and very much the truth. No one in power in Brussels wants what Salvini is selling. Not many in Rome do either. Because he had not resigned, President Mattarella could have faced impeachment for not going to elections. He only relented to let the M5 Star and Lega take power under that threat last year." Pardon me. So Conte has set the stage for Mattarella to take charge again. They will put the veneer of legitimacy on this process to protect Italy from Salvini. In reality, the only people they are protecting, and we all know who it is Brussels. Remember, Salvini wants to circumvent EU budget controls through issuing the mini-bot parallel currency. And current polling puts him at just below the threshold to take power outright. The downstream effects of this are myriad, but there is one big fulcrum on which all of this hinges. M5 star leader Luigi Di Maio is now placed to play kingmaker. He can either do a deal with Matteo Renzi and the Democrats, who M5 star formed to oust from power, or he can drag things out to attack Salvini for putting Italy in turmoil and hoping for the best in the next election. Now, I'm skipping a few paragraphs here. Towards the end of the article, quote, Five Star was born out of the disgust Italians had for the leadership in Rome and the technocratic overthrow of Silvio Berlusconi's government back in 2011. It was a pure protest party, especially when Beppe Grillo was its figurehead. Now it's making deals to stay in power with those same technocrats. Di Maio has to think very carefully about where things go from here. Salvini is still in the driver's seat because a betrayal by the five-star party of that nature will see Italy ground into a paste. Look no further than the English Channel to see what Brussels wants to do to the Brits over Brexit. If you think Italy will be spared after their dalliance with insurrection, you are terminally naive. And Salvini not being a part of that works to his advantage going forward. Sometimes the best way to win a battle is to retreat and let your enemies overextend themselves. Di Maio wasn't a strong enough leader to keep the disparate factions within the five-star party on mission, and now he will pay for his lack of vision. So what I think is happening here is something that's been going on behind the scenes. I suspect that there's been a bit of collusion between Giuseppe Conte, the resigned prime minister, and Angela Merkel. And true to form, there's another article that I'm linking here in this from July 22nd, 2019. And you're not going to believe this, folks. Merkel accuses Salvini of criminal collusion with Russia. So when in doubt, blame Vladimir Putin and the Russians. And I'm quoting here, some questions arise here, she said. We have constantly monitored the very strong support that right-leaning parties have received from Russia in one way or another. Merkel added, this is a cause for concern. Now, let me stop before we go any further. For Merkel to admit that is really saying that Germany is monitoring all these right-wing parties in Europe. And who does that mean really is running the European Union? Merkel added, this is a cause for concern. Italy should clear up whether the Nationalist League Party sought or received funding from Russia, Merkel explained on Friday. Quote, clarification is up to Italy, unquote, she said. Quote, I think the Italian parliament or others will ask for clarification on the affair, unquote. Premier Giuseppe Conte has said he is willing to report to the Senate on July 24th over suspicions a person close to the League Party discussed taking funding via oil kickbacks from Russia, Russian news agency TASS reported. Deputy Premier and Interior Minister and League leader Matteo Salvini has refused to report to Parliament specifically about this case, saying he's willing to talk about everything during his regular question time session. Salvini denies that his party has taken a ruble from the Russians and described the case as ridiculous. On Wednesday, Salvini reiterated that he would not make time for a session, especially on the affair. Quote, I don't report on fantasy, unquote, he said. So it looks to me from what that's saying, reading between the lines a bit, that Giuseppe Conte was dealing behind the scenes, not only with Brussels, but more importantly, with Berlin and Ms. Merkel. So what's going to happen in Italy? Well, number one, continue to watch Italy. This is going to be very interesting. I suspect one of two scenarios could happen here. Ultimately, President Mattarella will be forced to call elections. And we could see, as Longo suggests in his article, a brief retreat of Salvini and his party, and a new coalition formed, which will more or less once again toe the Brussels globalist line, subject Italy to all sorts of refugees, and which was the crisis that brought this coalition government into power in the first place. If that's the case, they will ultimately fail and fall out of power, and I suspect Salvini will take over with a more or less solid enough majority that he does not have to form a coalition government, or if he does, with coalition partners that are more trustworthy than the ones he's had. That's the first scenario. The second scenario is we might go to elections and Salvini just gets in there with a strong enough government to be able to run the show. Now, a lot is going to depend on how Italy looks at what's happening in the United Kingdom with Boris Johnson and the Brexit vote. But here's the big problem with this Russia collusion narrative. In Italy, there really isn't this cultural, political disdain or dislike of Russia. This is the big problem in Italy. There's really no ground for it to grow on. So in other words, this narrative I think is going to lead nowhere, even though I do suspect that Conte and Merkel were up to something in the background. That's a suspicion, folks. I don't have any evidence for that, but it is a suspicion as to what's going on. Now, the other thing about this election is you heard a brief reference to the idea that Salvini wants to create a parallel currency. Now, we've been hearing a lot about this. It's not just in Italy. We've heard this from Malaysia, where the government wants to have a currency for domestic use and then remain within the globalist system for international trade. And we've seen this idea before. We saw it, believe it or not, under the Nazis. Because what happened when the Nazis took power was you had more or less a central bank globalist lockout of Germany from global markets, and they would not exchange other foreign currency for the Reichsmark. What the Germans did was they created a parallel currency that foreigners could exchange and use inside of Germany and avoid having to deal with the Reichsmark altogether. So we're hearing this, and this may be yet another desperate attempt to sidestep the global loanists and central bankers. So a lot going on in Italy. I'm suspecting elections probably sometime within the next 6 months, and we might see a tactical retreat on Salvini's part in order to effect a strategic victory. That's the first scenario, and then the second is an outright Salvini victory. I suspect that given that the Brexit deadline is coming up very fast, that the Italians will wait to see what happens before they call elections. So in other words, I don't think Italy is going, President Mattarella is going to call elections before watching what happens with the Brexit. So that's my suspicion. Continue to watch Italy. This game is not over by any stretch of the imagination. It's going to get very, very interesting in the next few months, in my opinion. Now, anyway, don't forget, tomorrow we do have the vid chat. That'll be at 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time. I will, as usual, be in the chat room, provided I can make this new format work. And I'll be in the chat room earlier for, our informal chit chat and discussion and so on. I've got a lot of questions that people have already submitted. Please remember, if you're members, try to log in directly to the YouTube site and also on the website as you usually do. So that's it. Watch Italy, folks. This is going to be a very, very interesting few months. I'll see you on the flip side. Bye-bye, and God bless.